Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Fenn.Talks podcast. On today's episode, we're featuring Fennemore's Chief Talent Officer, Bob Kramer. Bob, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay.
I'm really excited to touch on today's conversation as we'll be talking through our attorney recruitment as well as our summer associate program. So before we do that, Bob, I think it's really important that you share a little bit more about your professional journey and ultimately, why did you decide to choose Fennemore as, the place that you'll call home in your professional career?
Like a lot of law students, I didn't have a legal background. I didn't have a family member that was a lawyer. So I went through without really any guidance or mentor or anybody really guiding me. And I was kind of leading myself through the process. And so I did on-campus interviewing as a second year at Arizona State University. And I interviewed with most of the big firms and truly enjoyed all of them, to be honest. And at a certain point, it got hard to distinguish between some of the law firms. But in the end, person by person that I met at Fennemore, I felt a genuine connection with when I interviewed with people. And I felt like they cared about me as a person, not just my qualifications, not just my GPA and those things, but they asked me about me. And I really felt like these are people that I could want to be with, that I would want to surround myself with and be partners with for 40 years. And here I am 33 years later, almost at my 40 years that I always envisioned in my life. And no regrets about that decision. And my gut was right that the people are really genuine. And so that's what brought me to Fennemore Craig. I was a summer associate in 1987, which I know is a long time ago. But yeah, and then I joined the firm as a permanent associate in 1988. And then I practiced, just to give you the full flavor of how I've transitioned to what I currently do. I was a partner in our environmental and natural resources section until about 5 or 6 years ago when the firm decided that we wanted to hire a chief talent officer. And I applied for the position, which was interesting. Applying for a position, having been at a place for 20 something years and already being a partner and being interviewed by everybody. And we were all inclusive in that interview process, including existing associates. And so recruiting and developing and helping others has always been my passion. I loved practicing law, but the piece that I was always most passionate about was more the people piece. And so I was fortunate enough to be selected for the position and haven't looked back. Love every second of it.
One thing that you mentioned is the fact that you've been with the firm for so long, and that's not uncommon to see within Fennemore. There are a lot of people that have been with the firm for a long duration of time, and that's one thing that really helps with creating a strong company culture and with making it such a special place to work. So, Bob, we've kind of touched on some of the key initiatives that you work on as far as recruiting top talent, helping with our attorney retention, as well as the summer associate program. But to overly simplify it, I would love to hear your thoughts on what types of attorneys would thrive within Fennemore.
That's a great question, Lindsay. I think that there's some common characteristics amongst good lawyers, good quality, sound lawyers. And I'll touch on those, and then I'll tell you the characteristics that may not be in common with all firms, but that I think may separate us and what may be make us a little unique, and things that I look for in interviews when I'm interviewing. It's like, are there touches of these things? Obviously, to be a good lawyer, you've got to be smart. You got to have logical thinking. You've got to be a good communicator, both in writing and oral advocacy skills. Those are just givens no matter where you work. You've got to be a hard worker too. The law is not an easy profession. No professions are easy, really. When you really think about it, you got to be willing to dedicate yourself to any of them. But things that over time that I think that really distinguish and can really set someone up for success at Fennemore are creativity. Our clients' problems are not amenable to a cookie cutter approach. It's not the same thing. A will is not the same for one person as the next person. So you've got to be creative about your ways, because our problems are not amenable to a inside the box solution. So you got to be able to think outside the box. You got to have fire in the belly. You have to be passionate about what you do. What you do has to matter to you personally, because if it doesn't, you're just going through the motions, and it shows. It shows in results. It shows in attitude. It just shows. If somebody doesn't really, they're just going through the motions, it's gonna show. And that may work some places if you're doing cookie cutter work or something like that. But you got to have fire in the belly. At Fennemore, you have to be collaborative and a team player. We love to work with each other. We love to share ideas. We love to bounce ideas off of each other. If you're more of a lone wolf, that may work, but at Fennemore, you're really going to thrive if you don't mind a knock on the door and saying, hey, let me just bounce something past you. That's a knock on the virtual door now. For maybe a bit longer, but we're still open to those phone calls, at all times. Let me just run something past you. And then finally, if 2020 taught us anything, you got to be flexible. You absolutely have to be able to pivot on a dime if you need to. When I practiced and still in my current role, some of the most exciting things when that phone call, you get a phone call and what you thought was going to happen that day is not what's going to go down. And the adrenaline rush of a new problem, of a crisis. You've got to be flexible and be able to pivot. So those are kind of 4 things that I've thought about over time that really may be different for Fennemore, and really the things that I look for special in a candidate beyond the typical things that every law firm would be looking for.
We always like to try and attract some special individuals, and that even starts with our summer associate program. So for those individuals that are tuning in that may not be from the legal profession, maybe they're some of our clients or community contacts, would you mind just explaining what is a summer associate program?
Sure. Most people might think of it as an externship or an internship, something along those lines. We don't use those words. We use summer associate program, which is we recruit both first-year law students, people that have concluded their first year law school, and second year law students to come in and work with us for 8 weeks. And essentially, just to draw it down to its bottom line, it's an 8-week interview process for both sides. We are seeing if that person will fit in long-term with the firm. Can they write well? Can they communicate well? Do they have fire in the belly? Are they creative? Are they collaborative? Those types of things. And then by the same token, they are looking at us to say, hey, is this a place where I would want to be long-term? Is this a culture that I think I would thrive in? So it's an 8-week mutual interview process where the summer associates get real legal work, real legal projects. They're working with attorneys. These are not things that are made up. These hours are going to a client. Sometimes it's a no-charge client or a nonprofit entity or something like that. So there may not be a bill, but this is a real legal problem that someone is facing that they're going to be asked to solve. And they're going to ask to be able to speak about it to an assigning attorney. They're going to ask to be able to write a memo or something about it to show their written communication skills. And so that we can kind of test those waters and they can test us as well. So it's kind of a two-way street. Plus we try to expose them to, they're not licensed attorneys yet. So there's limitations in terms of what they could do. But what we try to do is to show them what it's like to be a lawyer at Fennemore Craig long-term. So we try to get them practical opportunities to see things, to witness things that we take for granted every day. But that I remember back when I was a summer associate, I had no idea what a deposition was like. I was so excited to just go watch a deposition for the first time. So excited. Or a closing. Again, things that we take for granted 33 years later are a whole new world to really bright and intelligent people. So we try to expose them to what those things are like. And then finally, we take a lot of efforts so that they get to know the Fennemore team, everyone at Fennemore, so that they can kind of see again, do I fit in? Do I feel like I have a place here? So there's a lot of fun activities. They participate in all firm-wide meetings, while they're here during the 8 weeks, hearing about developments. Last summer, they participated in all of our COVID-related response meetings and stuff like that. So we try to bring them in, even though they're only with us for 8 weeks, we try to let them see what it's like long-term to be a Fennemore team member.
In 2020, Fennemore was actually one of the few firms in the entire country to continue and move forward with a summer associate program. And we actually received some national coverage based on that. So would you mind just sharing a little bit more about how it looked a little bit different in 2020 and what some of those success stories were?
Yeah, I think we probably received a lot of attention. There were a lot of firms, especially in our markets, that did proceed with having a program, but a lot of firms did cancel, leaving a lot of students let down. So we did proceed. And the one thing that really, I think, set us apart was most firms were delaying their summer programs and saying, hey, June 1's the start date. We're going to delay it for 3-4 weeks. We actually accelerated ours. We started it early. We started in early May. We checked with our students to make sure that was okay, that they didn't have other plans. I don't know what plans they could possibly have with most of the country in lockdown, but still we consulted with them and said, does this work? We accelerated it because we knew we had to pivot, and we thought that we knew more about the near future as opposed to the far future. So we received national attention because we were probably the first firm to start a 100% virtual program, remote. Nobody came into the office. We had students working around the country in different time zones. And so we coordinated every aspect of it over Zoom and online and by telephone, which is really completely different from the experiences in the past. They were all in person. Somebody working remote, that would have probably been laughed off and said, no, you can't possibly do that. That's not how we do our summer program. So we did it 100% virtual. Everything was over Zoom. I kind of joked at the end of the program with the summer associates. I asked, if you guys saw each other in an airport, those of you that don't go to the same school, would you know each other? Would you have any idea how tall someone is? Would you have any idea what they physically look like in an airport? You could walk past somebody that you just spent 5 weeks getting to know very well and have no idea it was them. And our program was really successful, I think in large part because we had so many people that were flexible and willing to learn with us, especially our summer associates. They were so generous, so appreciative, and going with the flow with us and learning with us and providing honest feedback about, hey, this is working, this isn't working. And we try to set up a culture at the firm where we want that. We want to hear in real time, things are going well, these things aren't going quite as well. And so it was a real credit to, I think, to our summer associates that the program was so successful, that they were so flexible. And then, as always, our attorneys jumped in 100%. Whatever we asked them to do, they wanted to do. Not they were willing to do, they wanted to do it. Because they're just as vested as the summer associates in getting to know the people that we're going to bring on full time. They also want to know, do I want to be next to this person for 40 years at a director lunch or at an associate lunch or a happy hour or something? So our firm attorneys just jumped in, our staff jumped in, made everything virtually easy. It was very smooth sailing. It took a village. And mostly, like I said, it was due to our summer associates, just an incredible group of people that were flexible with us and were appreciative, deeply appreciative for whatever we could do.
Mentoring is something that we do and really focus on in the summer associate program, but not only in that program are we looking at mentoring, we do that for all of our team members. We also are always looking for opportunities to help set our team members up for success. So just curious, I know you play a heavy role in the mentoring process and that program within Fennemore. So do you mind sharing a little bit more about how mentoring is making a positive difference for our team members?
Yeah, we take mentoring really seriously at the firm, and I look back on my career, and I had both a formal mentor, somebody who was assigned to me, whether he liked it or not. He was assigned to me, and he did just an incredible job behind the scenes, doing things, making sure that my workload was okay, checking on me in ways that didn't seem like a helicopter parent, just making sure I was okay as a person. Plus, over time, organically, I had informal mentors and still do. 33 years later, I still have informal mentors. In fact, some of them are younger than me now. And I love learning from anybody. But to have somebody that's formally assigned to look after you and to see your professional development, to make sure you're getting the type of work that you want, to make sure that you're happy, somebody that you can go to in a confidential way and have conversations like, hey, I'm struggling, that this is hard for me. Is there anything we can do? Some of it is organic, as you know, a little bit, you're not always going to be thrilled with everything that you're doing. And you have ebbs and flows in your professional career. And there's times where you're like, is this all it's about? And then other days you're ecstatic about it. And so you have somebody that's there through the long haul that cares about you as a person, your professional development. And so we make sure that every associate at Fennemore has a director, a partner, mentor that's assigned to them. And then when you start out as the newest of lawyers, you also have an associate mentor, somebody who's a little bit more your vintage and has been through law school a little bit more recently than maybe a director mentor has, and who certainly has been an associate because they still are an associate. And so they're wondering, hey, how do I do this? Hey, I'm getting conflicting advice on this or this. What do you think? Again, somebody that you can go to and just ask some tough questions, and you're not going to be judged for it because every person that you're asking those questions to had those same questions at the same point in their career. And so it makes a huge difference to have a positive mentor across the board. And again, like I said, I still have them. They're not assigned to me anymore, and they may not even know they're my mentor, but they truly are.
Along the same lines of mentoring, I'm just curious, what is some of the best advice that you've ever received?
Probably the best piece of advice I ever received was from my father, who passed away when I was 16, which was pretty young at the time, but still, even from an early age, and I still remember it. It's, Bob, anything you're asked to do, give it your all, 100%. As long as you give it your best, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, you gave it your best. It may not have worked out, but you gave it your best. You also may not know the consequences of what you're being asked to do. It may seem like, you just go do it halfway and it's not a big deal. Well, it may be a big deal. You just don't know. You don't know where it fits into the bigger scheme of things. But everything that you do, give it your all, and then you'll have no regrets. You won't have to look back and go, God, I wish I wouldn't have rushed through that. I wish, thinking, I can halfway do this. So that was the best advice that I ever got in my life. And I still think about it every day. Sometimes the advice was with a little bit of parental encouragement of, did you give it your best? Those kinds of things. But I'm grateful for that advice. And I would give that to anybody which is do your best on everything you're asked to do. And then you'll have no regrets looking back.
Well, I do think that's some really good advice. And this is a perfect platform for you to offer some additional advice to those individuals that are considering law school or just entering their professional journey as attorneys. So aside from the advice that your father offered to you, is there anything else that you'd like to offer to those individuals?
Take it seriously. You're going to make a career out of it. You're going to spend a long time doing it in your daily life. And so enjoy it, make sure that you're doing something that you're passionate about. If you're not passionate about it, it's going to show. And so pick an area of the law that really fascinates you, that really intrigues you, that makes you want to get up in the morning. And then, of course, give it your all. I always tell people, like if you're working on a case that you're really not all that excited about, and that happens from time to time. I'm not going to lie. And any lawyer that tells you, well, I'm excited about every case, they're probably, I find that hard to believe. I won't call them, dishonest or anything, but I would just find that hard to believe, which is if you're having trouble, just imagine that you're doing work for a family member. Imagine that's your grandmother that has that legal problem. Make it personal, make it matter. And so when you do that, you're going to give it your all. I think you're going to succeed. And then I tell associates all the time, again, if they're wondering the context and stuff, your job is to make sure that the people you're working with sleep at night, in the sense that you don't want them waking up at 2 a.m. wondering, I wonder if Lindsay's got this. I wonder if she's on top of it. I wonder if she remembers the deadline. I wonder if she remembers that conversation that we talked about. The response has to include this. If you're not waking up at night, Lindsay, because you know that associate has got it and is going to take care of it and they've got every detail, that's a fantastic associate.
So for those individuals that are interested in exploring the opportunity of joining our team, Bob, what does that process look like for applying for a role at Fennemore?
It depends on the situation. If we're hiring out of law school, that process looks like one thing. Whereas if we're hiring a lateral, meaning we need somebody with existing experience in a certain area, that process looks slightly different. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the common elements of that is you're going to meet some people, you're going to meet team members, and you're going to talk with them in an interview setting and see if what we offer is what you're looking for, and vice versa. See if what we're looking for is what you're offering. So it's an interview process. And then ultimately, is there a fit? But, the logistical piece is always online on our website. So if you're contemplating, hey, I want to be a summer associate, Fennemore looks interesting to me, there's always a link on the career portion of the firm's website. And then for existing openings for laterals, again, there's the same thing. There's just a little different link. One is for law students and one is for attorneys. And the people that we're going to be recruiting, they're smart enough to find it.
So Bob, as we like to wrap up today's conversation, is there anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with?
The law is a fun thing. Take it all in, enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, and don't look back. You're being taken someplace for a reason. You may not know what it is that day, but you're always moving and you're always advancing in your career.
So Bob, for those individuals that want to further connect with you or learn a little bit more about your background, what is the best way for them to do that?
I'm on the firm's website. under attorneys because I still am a partner at the firm. And so you can find me there and you can contact me in any way that's on there. I don't mind calls on my cell phone. Doesn't bother me a bit. And my cell phone is listed on the firm's bio. You can call me at the office, which is actually now forwarded to my cell phone. So those numbers are one and the same. Email, whatever way anybody wants to connect. I'm completely open to any of those modes.
Wonderful. Well, Bob, thanks again for joining us for this episode.
Thanks for having me.